Good morning from Pristina, Paxa Rupiana here. Again from Pristina, my last day. I'm heading on to Albania, back to Albania, to the coast. And I would like to give you some conclusion of my visit today. Here is the European Union headquarters. Kosovo is ready for Europe. And it's now time for Europe. For clean governance, it's happening. In the back here, a lifelong campaigner is now in the government, here the government building. It's he was braving Milosevic troops. You have seen it in the museum. He's very courageous and he will now clean up the government, and that will be very important. When the top risk, I have already made a podcast about it, maybe you heard it. When the top man on the country, in a government, is no longer corrupt and doesn't ask money from everybody, obviously then the lower levels, they are afraid to ask, and some of them will do. But they see that the environment has changed. Additionally, they don't have to work for the top guy anymore to raise funds to make sure that he is enough. So ultimately, everything cools down in a sense, and better governance is coming. Obviously, the same has to happen on the local level. It's very important that also the municipalities clean up, and also here the municipalities go through this transformation process now in October, and that nobody is elected from this wartime generation. Everybody who knows, you have seen Zach Blinken, the Secretary of State, and his Twitter feed when he put Berisha, who has his lifetime achievements for the Balkans and also many flaws. He put Berisha on that list of no entry, and that's the equivalent of a cruise missile from the Americans. If anybody here in Kosovo wants a similar tweet for Zach Blinken on his name, I recommend to stay in politics. Otherwise, I call everybody to stay out of politics. All this war generation, all these heroes, all the guerrilla fighters, and this generation of commandantes and of anybody else who was involved in bad governance on a bad position, on a top position, it's time to go to the Oda I Burave, that means in the Stepi. All of them, I appreciate your historic sacrifice, the sacrifice for the nation, the contribution to building the state, but now get out of the way, get in the house, get in retirement. All of the heroes of the past must be in the museums or in private business, or can be in the civil society, but not in the institutions, not on the local level, in the municipalities. I made the tweet, people like Sami Lustako, they cannot be the mayor of any European country. You will be isolated, and these persons will feel the hammer of American power over time, and we will lose the debate in Europe with such people. So if Kosovo chooses the criminals, then you will be isolated and it will be very lonely in the future. So I call for good and clean government, and I think everybody who has not understood the Berisha message of retirement by the Americans, I cannot help, because it's so obvious, it's so clear. On a different topic, yesterday and the whole week I was heavily criticized by the trolls of Vučić and his troll army from America to Australia to Serbia, and that of course I'm a Nazi. I'm an Austrian activist since 30 years, actually 40 years. I was also in my very youth a political activist, and I'm calling for Kosovo to be a NATO and EU member. Same for Bosnia and Albania, obviously. The West, liberated this predominantly country. It's a pro-Western country, but with a Muslim majority of people. And here is the mosque, and I'm the Nazi, yes. I mean, I cannot understand such people. I was already accused by similar idiots 30 years ago, when I criticized Stalin's crime, and that was not so much a common knowledge in the beginning of the opening of the Cold War. And it's always the same. They come with this extreme kind of insult, and often these are the same people who committed crimes or who defend, of course, genocide and see genocide normal, but the Germans and the Austrians are the Nazis for them. This is so low level of argumentation. I have complained to Czech from Twitter, the CEO, and I hope that Vučić will lose his Twitter account and all his armies will be under heavy scrutiny from the Twitter policy because it's outrageous to be called such a terrible criminal system. And I have personally been all my life in the memorial sites next to the region where I live, in Mauthausen, in Auschwitz, in many others of them. And I take that very seriously, and I don't take it lightly to be called like this. And you will see, I will redouble my efforts against Serbian genocidal regime and their Russian backers and their Chinese friends, because this is so outrageous. Insulting me that way will just motivate me for even much more activity. And you will see where you get with this low level of argumentation. You exclude yourself from the European and West and the free world. And that's anyhow where it's going, because as I see it very clearly now, after all these talks here, Serbia is heading towards Russia and China. And we must make sure that the victims of Serbia are safe in NATO, and Kosovo and Bosnia must join NATO to be protected very clearly from American firepower, from the so potential Serbian military aggression. And this is very important. It was important in the 90s. We failed. Mr. Rugova in 91. Here he is. We should have done it early. I was calling for that. We were not ready. So hundreds and thousands of people died for the horror vision of Greater Serbia in the Balkans. And then it took two NATO interventions to stop genocidal actions of Milosevic. And now his sons and grandsons, in a way, ideologically, are in power in Belgrade. They have their backers in Russia and China. And so clearly we have to help the victims of that past, and also integrate them into the first NATO, the Euro. Kosovo luckily has it already, but also to integrate them into NATO as full members of the alliance. And then once everybody is in NATO, EU and the Euro in Kosovo and Bosnia, you will see that also the Serb middle classes will rise against their neo-fascist, yes, Mr. Vucic, I mean you, dictatorship, which and his troll armies, and they will also then repeat the 5th of October, because and that is, I think, the way it has to go when Vucic is not ready for anything but Russian-backed aggression. And then he is definitely in no way towards the European Union, no way towards NATO, no way to the Euro. And all my peace overtures and peace proposals and all this fake dialogue is obviously for naught. It's very sad conclusion. It's very clear that we cannot continue with the dialogue in the present form. There is no will for peace, while peace will is here. In Kosovo, there is readiness for peace, but in Serbia it's not. And you know, as long as we are on that kind of trajectory, and as long as I get insulted like that from his trolls, we are very clear what has to be done. Serbia must be frozen in its candidacy. The funding must be stopped. It can go and look for, they can learn Chinese and Russian over there. It's okay if they want. That's then the future. But we have to tell it to the good Serbian people as well, to the middle classes, that that's the future which Mr. Vucic has ready for them. Being isolated alone as aggressor nation, branded for all their crimes, and then with the only allies, dictatorships of the East, autocrats from Russia and China will be your only friends left, if you continue that way and that trajectory. And you can then choose. Everybody else will be rich and prosperous, secure. Everybody else from the Balkans, Bosnia and Kosovo included, they will be in NATO and in the EU. And yes, the future of Serbia, then good luck. We will cut the funding as well, be sure about it. No more highways with our money, and then the money diverted towards Chinese and Russian drones, and so on and so on. And trust me, the time will come for that. So that's my short, a bit negative rant in the morning. I want to thank everybody who followed me now. I will now think it's my last video for today. Maybe I will have some other meetings. I will show you then the road to Albania, the superhighway of Kosovo towards Albania. That will be then my next way, and then also the major investments going on in the most strategic port of the history of the Balkans. This is Albania, and this is Durrës. It will be interesting for you in the future to see it, and I will give you, of course, many, I hope, interesting videos. And I call again for peace here from Mother Teresa Street. She was the great heroine of peace, and I think it's time for peace in the Balkans. But peace depends on all sides. It's not a unilateral task of the European Union or of the Americans or of Kosovo. And peace is not submission, don't get it wrong. Peace is a mutual obligation for both sides to work peacefully together in the spirit of Europe and of transatlantic partnership. Who is ready is welcome. Who is not ready can stay alone. It's fine for me as well. We have to isolate Serbia then, and we have to tell everybody that they are like they are. And if you don't want to be in that company, then change tack now. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye from Pristina.